Hi, this is Filiberto Amati, and I'm here today with two longtime friends, Elisabetta Borghi and Ralph Talmont. Welcome, guys. And we're here to discuss the world of NFTs and the metaverse. With Elisabetta, we are doing a series on the subject, and we have interviewed a number of let's say, entrepreneurs in the space. And Ralph, with whom I share a past in Boma, Poland, is also launching a project together with our friends in the space. So we thought it would be a great idea for us to interview him and have a chat about what's happening and what's his point of view. Welcome, guys.
Greetings.
So, Ralph, tell us about this new project in a nutshell. Your 30-second.
My 30-second elevator pitch. We're on the ground floor, and she's going up. It's really interesting. It's interesting how it's come about, because over the last couple of months we've really created it and from scratch. What we're building is a platform, a web-based, essentially a SaaS platform, as a white label solution for brands and organizations to be able to create NFTs from go to wow. So they design them, test them on the test net, release them, and then manage the process. So it's a production platform for brands and organizations to be able to create their own series of NFTs.
What's the name of the company?
And it is called Collectico Labs. Collectico Labs because to begin with, at least, we thought we would concentrate on the area of collectibles, simply because that is the biggest, most dynamically growing area in NFTs at the moment. Historically, and of course, history of NFTs is somewhat brief, but historically it has seen the most spectacular growth over the last 12, 18 months. And we think that now is the time to actually create this set of tools for brands to be able to avail themselves of for the simple reason that now the idea of NFTs as something useful, as opposed to just a funky crypto toy, is permeating into general consciousness.
And this positioning, let's say, this approach exposes you to the world of sports in that sense, correct?
It does. It exposes us to the world of sports, which is somewhat ironic, because in contrast to my partners, I'm not terribly interested in sports as a spectator activity.
You mean you're not interested in 22 sweaty guys running after a ball? Why not?
Not terribly. Of course, I've been to games and I love the atmosphere, and rugby is a terrific thing to watch, but it's just not my thing to watch. I participate in sports, but not so much as a spectator. But of course, I'm really in the minority here, because spectator sports are a massive thing, as we well know. And just to give you an idea of the scale, there's been research done, and I can shoot you the links once we finish, and you can add them to the program description or what have you. But there's been a research done on the size of the market for sports collectibles, and it's in the hundreds of billions annually. Now we are looking at three verticals: sports being one, entertainment being another, and the arts being the third. And I have a sneaking suspicion that music and entertainment actually have more potential and an ultimately larger market than sports collectibles. Everybody loves music. Everybody has a favorite musician, and the thing about NFTs, the thing that actually got me thinking about this whole space to begin with, is this a very exciting and only something that we're only beginning to discover and explore. And now this very exciting ability for NFTs to tie together the digital world and the physical world in ways that we're just beginning to dream of, which is hugely exciting.
It's just a question because it's normal to make a little bit of order in what it is considered, or it can be considered an NFT, because many people are thinking to the profile picture or just a design of something, but the concept of NFT is huge. What can you enable effectively if a company has a project for you?
Yeah, the surface, it hasn't actually been scratched yet, with profile pictures and funky apes and and dudes with laser eyes and spiky hair. That really has been just the very, very beginning, and it's been the most obvious and most immediately available field to exploit for producers of NFTs. And of course, successful projects have been built around these, as we well know. But the surface is large, and it's only just beginning to get scratched. The thing about NFTs, the thing to remember is that it's ultimately, we're talking about software, and software. Well, we can get it to do anything we like. It's ones and zeros, behaving in a way that we somehow design and order. What we find particularly exciting is exactly this ability to create ways for artists, for athletes, for brands to imagine and then build and then release mechanisms in which they can engage their fan bodies, if you will, fan bodies large and small, in ways that have not been possible before, or they have been, but it's not like we would describe them as being reasonably priced. The key to understand is that we can create with NFTs, by virtue of them being unique and personalized, we can create mechanisms that are very much directed at the one individual person who is the owner of the NFT, creating a direct relationship between that person and the artist or the athlete or what have you. And we can do that at scale. Now, we've always been able to, obviously, create personal relationships. Artists are very good at this. And you go to a gig and you listen to your favorite band, you are in a relationship with these musicians. But that's you and 1,000 other people. With software, we don't have size limitations, but the relationship remains individual. And that is really the thing to get if you're thinking about ways to use NFTs in this sort of context. Once we actually get that fundamental kind of strategic concept, then we very quickly realize that, and it's a cliche, but we actually can build anything in terms of these sorts of relationships. And we really are, and for the first time really in history, we are really limited only by imagination. This is the scarce scarce resource, our imagination, because we're just, as I said, we're just beginning to explore this area, which of course means that if there's a successful project, like let's say, the Bored Apes, then the next day you immediately have 100 other projects that spring up. That it's not bored apes, it's bored turtles and bored snakes and bored ibises and whatever, hedgehogs, bored hedgehogs. Maybe that's an idea. But of course, continuing on that path of Me Too, as we know, in terms of branding, it's kind of useless because you're not different, you're not creative, you're not actually engaging people in anything exciting. You're just saying, yes, this is an interesting flag, I'll wave it, but it's somebody else's flag. So the thing that that we're really pushing with our prospective customers is to have them sit down and think about what they want to achieve rather than how they want to achieve it. The how is our job, but what they want to achieve, what they can achieve, and importantly, what they've always wanted to build but couldn't because it was too complicated or too expensive.
Ralph, besides the technological barrier, which of course you're providing a solution to with the software as a service type of approach, what are the psychological hurdles, the barriers that organizations and brand owners have before even the leaders? Because this is pretty much an emerging space, and as you say, we haven't scratched the surface, and we're still it's still spreading and evolving, and and as Elisabetta said before, the same notion of NFT today, it's not the notion that we had of NFT 15 months ago. So
no, it's
how do you what's blocking them, and how do you unlock?
There are several elements to the answer, because brand managers or managers of bands, artists, or individual athletes, these are intelligent people who are well aware of what's going on in the space. But the first block is, as you said, the perception that technology is difficult. To a degree, that is true. It's not like turning on your computer and firing up a word processor. But the point of what we're doing is to remove that block altogether, not even to explain how it's done. We're removing it altogether. The way the platform will work is drag and drop, set of questions, fill in this form, press a button, away it goes. The second block is one of perception of the field of NFTs being actually a minefield of NFTs, which is understandable because, of course, it's very hyped. All of a sudden, everyone seems to be talking about it, which is actually not true, because what we're having to do is to educate from scratch most of the time. So this perception that everyone is talking about it is itself true.
The hashtag is trending, but nobody really knows what it means.
The hashtag is trending, and it is trending largely with many misconceptions and misunderstandings. Not least because there have been some high-profile disasters. There have been some scams. There's been this sort of the usual sort of activity that you can imagine will go on the edges of a gold rush. If there's a gold rush, then on the edges, of course, the snake oil salesmen will pop up with their tents and con people out of their hard-earned cash. Unfortunately, given human nature, this is normal. But what we're seeing is that there are now a rapidly growing number of quote unquote normal, honest people getting into the space, in addition to the pioneers and in addition to the con artists. Normal people who have realized that actually there is something really interesting and exciting going on, and they'd like to explore it. And the third building, the third block, is the bridge between having the NFT in your wallet and being able to do something interesting with it. So far, you know, it's been okay. Here is I have my phone, and on my phone, I have these NFTs, and they're interesting, right? Not exactly the sort of, you know, impress your buddies value that you would like to have.
Yeah, not what would place them on the economist utility curve,
No,
so to speak.
but as it happens, makers of smart TVs have already started to announce models of you know, large screen TVs coming up later this year that will have an NFT function built in. So I can imagine sitting, seeing as it's all connected. I mean, it's Wi-Fi in your house, right? Sitting on the sofa with my buddies, saying, "Oh, look, I just bought this amazing piece of art from this artist I know and love and have been following for 10 years. But now I can actually own something because I'm actually running out of space and wall space in my house. So there's not too many paintings I can actually hang up. And click click, here it is, and up it goes on the big screen. So all the pieces of the puzzle this year, I think, are going to come together on the sort of psychological level that you were talking about, where the level of anxiety is going to be reduced simply because there will be more interesting, positive, quote unquote, normal projects that will be written about in the press, and people will be able to simply enjoy what they've bought in ways other than just this.
Yes, yes. I remember I was reading an article 2 weeks ago with this journalist telling that she spent like 1,300 pounds for a profile picture of a pig. And she said, after a while, I still have this picture on my mobile phone and I don't know how to do with it. She said, initially, it was cool when I bought it, but in the end, I don't know what to do with it.
Well,
And
the
But
word
it's like narcotics. You have the rush, and then
and
it
then
winds down
and then what?
immediately.
It's like very disappointing. The word that everyone keeps talking about, of course, is utility, which is a sort of a shorthand for what the hell can I do with this thing? And the point of NFTs as useful things is that you can actually do a whole lot of things in addition to having a profile picture of a guy with spiky hair and laser eyes. If we go back to the original idea of connecting the physical and the digital, if you're a band, you can release your NFTs, and these NFTs can function as, in effect, access passes. Now, to like meet and greet, or backstage, and have drinks with the guys after the gig, whatever. Which of course you could do anytime. You could release, you could release cards like these, right, with NFC chips, which actually let people in through the barrier and everything. But it's expensive, because if you want to sell 5,000 of these, you have to send out 5,000 of these, and they really have very limited use. You can get in through the gate, but that's it. With NFTs, the same piece of software, the same little strip of code, the unique digital asset can function as an access card which lives on your phone, and if it's scannable or interacts with the security at the gig in any kind of way, that means you can get in and have drinks with the guys. But it also means that you'll become a member of an elite club of supporters that can have other perks. You can then interact with other members of this club if you so wish, and music fans, of course, love to interact with each other. It's a bit bloody useless if you have one of these and you go, okay, who else has this one? Like anybody? Like in neighbor? No, nobody, right? There's no way.
All stands around the concept of DAO.
Yeah, and then you start to get into these interesting ideas of creating DAOs and organizations that build on this technology to create communities, and then the community can go off and do stuff. And we, as I said, we're just exploring the possibilities, and I think the possibilities. We need to think of the possibilities and the opportunities as being powered by NFTs. In many ways, not just fundraising, because of course, yes, an artist, a sculptor can, if she so desires, she can release a series of NFTs to fund the next project. I mean, marble is not cheap, right? So she, right? So she gets 10 ton of marble delivered to her studio and works away at it, and yes, funding is an important part of it, but you could, of course, crowdfund it, right? You could go to Kickstarter as an artist and say, I've got this amazing idea, send me $100 and whatever, right? But then the fundraising layer, if you will, is the only thing there is, and again, it is very difficult to then continue the engagement, especially between the various members of the community. If there's 1,000 people who have sent in $100 each, they all feel great about having supported this artist, but there's very little that they can do by way of interchange and continuing conversation. If she releases NFTs, in contrast to running a Kickstarter campaign, these people who buy these NFTs become members of a community. There's an opportunity for conversation, ongoing dialogue, ongoing support, and the perks that this artist releases are just part of why the people are involved in supporting her in the first place.
So one comment which I think brings us back to a conference you invited me to speak to in Gliwice a few years back.
That goes back a while.
I presented to your audience this idea that the blockchain would become the way we manage the rights to access sport on TV, and they all looked at me and says, "This guy is loco." And actually, what the NFTs could do, it's exactly that right now. So that kind of issue.
It's the people who are local who actually are driving the change.
Exactly.
And the change, to a degree, technology moves because it wants to, but technology also moves because it needs to, because there are all kinds of friction and inefficiency in systems such as access control, as membership control. If I have one of these things and it's a membership card, I can lose it. So it means I have to get on the phone and say, I'm going to lose my card and send me another, right? Or someone can quote unquote borrow it, right? And there's Ralph Talmont .2 out there somewhere, at the fitness club or something, And then I show up and say, no, sorry, but you've used up all your clicks. And they're like, I haven't been for a month. What the hell? So in terms of clarity, transparency, survivability, the blockchain, of course, is a far more superior solution. Now, that is not to say that in of itself it is the fix to all of our ills, because people are creative and they will find ways to scam the system and ways around gateways and solutions. So ultimately, I think what we're going to see is a sort of a melange, connection of centralized systems of validation and decentralized systems of validation.
An hybrid form. But
Yeah.
I think that you touched on an aspect which I would like to, drill a bit, because there is the technological component, which is the blockchain, the NFT, and of course, it's an emergent technology which is useful, helpful, but also it's not necessarily intuitive for people who are not tech experts. Okay, and so there is going to be a lot of development on improving the technology, make it safer, making it more accessible, inclusive, upgrading the level of softwares that we can place inside the NFTs and so on and so forth. But you also touched on a very important aspect, which is there is a community building piece to it. Technology enables, but then if you don't steer it, the community, it won't live on its own. So what do you see happening on that side, and are you guys planning to do anything in the future on that side? As a former TEDx curator, you know everything about community building, I would say, no?
I dare say I know a little. I would be very cautious in using the word everything. A community needs a reason to exist. And the interesting thing about communities is that in a sort of a proto way, they exist everywhere, because communities consist of people. So if you're a Led Zeppelin fan, and Elisabetta is a Led Zeppelin fan, and I'm a Led Zeppelin fan, then we, by definition, belong to the set of humans who are Led Zeppelin fans. And then maybe, we may be a subset of the set of humans who are fans of rock music. And then that is a subset of fans of music, full stop. So the communities already exist. They need a reason to congeal, if you will, to solidify around a central idea, around a central object, be it a human, an artist, or an athlete, or a concept like activist communities. These things are, of course, driven by people. So by definition, you can't have a community that's driven purely by technology. It'll be enabled, as you say, by technology, but it needs to be driven by people. So what we're looking at is, in fact, creating a community of communities, among other things that we're going to be doing, is creating a community of communities within those, let's say, call them verticals, right? So a community of communities of people interested in the arts, a community of communities of people interested in sports, within that, football, within that, mixed martial arts, whatever, right? A community of communities of people interested in music and performance. And that is by far the most difficult aspect of what I would like to achieve, because the technology itself is actually fairly simple. I'm blessed to have 3 partners in the project, all of whom are software engineers. Our CEO is a software engineer, our COO is a software engineer, and our CTO is one of the leading blockchain developers in the country. So the technology is actually simple because they know how to do it. There's a set of requirements. Of course, it's a creative, messy process, but they've done it, right? They understand how to build software that works really well. The human element, of course, is where as the Polish saying goes, where the dog is buried, right? Which is where the messy bits occur. And the way to actually build a community is not to drive it as an individual and say, right, you do this, you do that, you do the other, because that's not a community. That's a top-down organization. The way to build a community is to get people interested and involved and empowered to actually build whatever it is that they want to build, which is where DAOs come in, and which is why so many DAOs, explode. They get really exciting, and it's all a bit of a flash in the pan, because then after a couple of weeks or a few months, people realize it's really bloody difficult, which is fine, because these experiments need to continue. In order to find out what works, we have to first find out what doesn't work. And let's hope the list of things that don't work is fairly short and it doesn't take forever in the rest of our lives. But the process of creating a community for quote unquote a community leader is really a process of evangelizing the idea behind the community. Like, this is what's important. This is why it's interesting. Isn't it cool? Look at all these other people who are involved. And then you kind of let go of the reins, and you curate the general direction, but you certainly don't impose. Go this way, don't go that way, because then they won't go anywhere.
It's the why, not the how or the what.
Yeah,
it's a work of listening, understanding the expectation of this community, because it's easier to invite people to join a Discord channel or whatever channel are you using to group them.
Yeah.
But in the end, the real resource is the community manager hearing, reading, interacting, and understanding what they are asking for.
The cliff is unforgiving. Come the 7th day, the fall off is 90%, maybe more. And the people may remain as members, but they're never there. So it's like buying buying a membership card to a gym in January, right? Because January is the month that all the gyms sell the memberships for the year, and they sell 3 or 4 times as many as they can accommodate, because they know that 3/4 of the people will never show up. An interesting thing which I'd love to read. This is an exchange with a friend of mine in Germany, he's in sports management, and asked what is important for football fans, because we assume things, and as we know, if you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. We assume things that may or may not be true about ideas. So I don't want to assume too much about building a community of football fans until I've asked enough people who are smarter than me and more experienced in the area. And there's a little kernel of an idea in this response that actually I hadn't really, if you think about it, it's obvious, but I hadn't really put together. Interesting question, Daniel says. For Germany, there's a huge club fan tradition. There's also a big connection between football supporters and their cities. So I would recommend to always have in mind a magic triangle between fan, city, club. Soccer fans in Germany love an easy but specific lifestyle. Football delivers identification and heroism. It is a sport almost every German kid can relate to. Soccer can be played anywhere. Soccer means sense and simplicity. The stadium is a place where they can live out their emotions without having the fear of being harassed. Fan love in Germany is most like to be inherited from father to son, daughter. Soccer has a huge power of integrating different cultures and nationalities. Now, most of this we know, but this idea of a connection to the city, not just the club in the city, was something that hadn't occurred to me before. Now, Filiberto is a football fan, and he will tell me it's obvious, but it's obvious to a fan, right? Who is already in the community. So the whole thing about community building is to find out what is actually important to the people for whom you want to create the community, and then you build these opportunities in, and you say, well, you can do this, you can do that, you can do the other, but ultimately you can do anything.
Very cool. Betty, do you have one last question for Ralph?
Do you think that one day there will be also a different type of content that cannot be purely a card or a piece of design? I'm thinking about the huge market in music or sports is related about moments. That could be a concert, that could be your favorite game, or I don't know, a piece of emotion. Because
This
an
piece of
emotion.
it's a piece of emotion, and we ascribe emotions to all manner of objects. I mean, animate, inanimate. This is a piece of greenstone from New Zealand, which sits on my desk. I spent a very long time in New Zealand, and I love the place. Now I don't quite know how I'm going to NFT this, but we'll see. But yes, you can connect any kind of content to NFTs. Of course, as I said, we're talking about ones and zeros. All content can be digitized in some way, whether it be visual or audio or time-based art, performance, sporting events, cultural events, events that we haven't even dreamed of yet. All these things can be connected to NFTs. The NFTs can be a representation of you belonging to that club of people who are excited about that particular thing. The aspect, the commercial aspect of NFTs being able to be resold is another layer which is very interesting. Some people will buy them to have them forever, hand them on to their kids. Others will buy them because they think it's a good investment, kind of like art, really. Some people, if I had the funds, I'd buy whatever Caravaggio was available on the market, hang it on my wall, and sit there and wonder at the amazing beauty of this work, and never part with it. Somebody probably smarter than me would buy the Caravaggio and say, okay, I'll hang on to it. I will enjoy it for the next 10 or 15 years, and then I'll see if I get a decent offer. It's the same sort of thing with NFTs, because they need to be considered assets. And this is kind of a key differentiator, if I may, to kind of leave with you. They're not liabilities, they're assets. They're not liabilities as in things that you pay for and that cost you money, but they're assets as in the things that you paid for and can make you money. Of course, we know that assets don't necessarily always make money, and there is a degree of risk like with anything. But the point is that this is a thing that you can own, that has a value that is monetary as well as emotional. And that is really the interesting nucleus of what NFTs are about. That they enable a direct connection to the emotional layer of being a human, as well as an interesting opportunity for commercial exchange.
Ralph, thank you very much. It was great to talk to you. Betty, thank you very much for the help, and we look forward to speaking to you in the future.
My pleasure, as always.
Thank you.